Hey everybody, you're watching We the Fandom, where we discuss comic books, pop culture, and the fandom experience. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more content. Given his appearance as the main antagonist in the upcoming film Thor Love and Thunder, as well as the popularity of the short I made, I thought I'd make a full story video on Gorr the God-Butcher. Though unlike the way the story is presented in the comic, I'm actually going to tell it in the chronological order of events. Chronologically, the story begins approximately 3,000 years before the modern era. Gorr, who is a member of an unknown species living on a dry, desolate planet where he and his people face constant hardship, with him having lost his mother to wild beasts as a child, losing his pregnant wife to a rock slide, and his children to starvation. It's while burying his son that the elder of his tribe chastises him. In their culture, Gorr's people believe that the dead should be hung by trees upon their deaths so that they can be collected by the gods. The same gods that seemingly ignore the plight of Gorr's people despite their blind worship. After being exiled by his tribe, and while wandering the desert, Gorr stumbles across a battle between two actual gods, a god of light and a god of darkness. Both seem to be on the verge of death when the god of light asks Gorr for his help. Gorr, being disgusted by this request given what his people have suffered, absorbs the power of the dark god and kills the god of light, before being fully enveloped by that power, the power of All Black the Necrosword, the blade created by Null the god of the symbiotes, and afterwards setting off on a mission to kill all gods in existence. Now jumping forward to the year 893 AD, a young Thor Odinson, not yet worthy of Mjolnir, is on Midgard celebrating the defeat of frost giants in Iceland, when the body of a butchered Native American god is discovered washed ashore. Days later, while on a raid with a group of Vikings, another dead god is discovered, this one of the Slavic pantheon, prompting Thor to investigate, where he meets Gorr the God-Butcher for the first time. The two fight and are somewhat evenly matched, with Gorr being slightly better. While Thor believes he is simply fighting another enemy, Gorr relates his purpose and philosophy to the young Thor, that gods are worthless, that gods only live to oppress mankind, and that every other living being would be better off without them. Gorr would end up leaving Thor for dead, which would end up being his greatest mistake, as Thor, being young and brash and never having faced an enemy like Gorr before, sets out immediately after he awakens to find Gorr, following a trail of dead Slavic gods to a cave. Unfortunately, Thor is taken out almost instantly, and he is held captive and tortured for days by Gorr, until the group of Vikings that had accompanied Thor come to his aid, themselves standing no chance, but their fury and eagerness for battle does buy Thor the time he needs to break free of his chains. As his mortal allies are slaughtered, Thor takes up his axe Jarnbjorn and cuts off one of Gorr's arms. Suddenly, there's an explosion where Gorr stood, leaving Thor and the Vikings to believe that Gorr was dead, though Thor himself has his suspicions. Having trouble sleeping that night and hearing a cry out in the darkness, Thor leaves the bed of a beautiful woman to investigate, finding one of Gorr's minions, only for it to be revealed to have been a trick, with the young Thor suddenly falling into a portal. And for now, we'll pause the story of young Thor and come back to him later. Fast forward to the modern era. Thor is seen answering the prayers of the inhabitants of the planet Indigar, bringing rain to their dry homeland and saving them from starvation. During the people's celebrations, one of the elders questions Thor on whether or not he is truly a god, telling Thor that his people don't have a god, though there are rumors of gods having lived in a jeweled city above the clouds long ago. This angers Thor, and he goes to investigate and to question these gods as to why they don't tend to their people's needs, only to find the halls empty and the only gods butchered. Recognizing the nature of the wounds as well as being attacked by one of Gorr's minions, this leads Thor to realize that his old enemy has returned and is likely still slaying gods. With a sense of urgency, Thor travels to Omnipotent City, the nexus of all the gods, the one place in the cosmos where divine beings will come together in fellowship. It's here, or more specifically, the library of Omnipotent City, that Thor hopes to find clues in his investigation of slain gods. And so he does. Thor travels from planet to planet, all recorded to have lost or forgotten gods, and finds the trail of bodies that Gorr has left behind, all the while being harassed by Gorr's minions. Infuriated by these revelations, Thor seeks the aid of Tony Stark in locating the cave in which he battled Gorr for the last time, and also asks Stark to warn the other pantheons of Earth of the threat. He heads into the cave seeking the God-Butcher, yet finds another god instead, one who seems mad, and tells Thor that Gorr's current plans are all the fault of Thor and what he did to Gorr all those years ago. Realizing that this might be another dead end, Thor takes the mad god, named Shadrach, to Omnipotent City, only to find the librarian knocked out cold and Gorr's minions burning the library. But Thor manages to find their target, a scroll containing a knowledge of the planet Chronux, home to the time gods. On Chronux, Gorr and his minions have killed all but one of the time gods, draining their blood and filling the pool of forevers, which Gorr intends to use to travel back to the beginning of all the gods. Gorr indeed travels back to the beginning of creation, to the birth of the first Elder God. He kills this god, takes its heart, and brings it back to the present where he is ready to enact the next step of his plan. However, that's exactly when the modern Thor flies in, intent on stopping Gorr and whatever he is planning. But despite being older, more mature, and more powerful than his younger self, Gorr has grown in knowledge and power as well. He is able to subdue Thor, and he steps into the Pool of Forevers once again to carry on with his plan. Thor tries to follow him in, and just like with younger Thor, we'll leave what happens next for later on. At this point, we are traveling forward once more, to some thousands of years in the future, where we are witness to King Thor, the last god of Asgard. Grizzled, worn down, and alone, Allfather Thor prepares to once more battle the minions of Gorr, refusing to back down or give in to his fate, but rather to fight and die as a king and a god. Despite his grit and his bravery, the last king of Asgard would be overwhelmed and fall, only to be set back on his throne to await the next fight. Never to be killed, never to go to Valhalla. And so Thor sets out again, reclaims Mjolnir, and prepares to do battle once more. A never-ending cycle. Only for it to end like it always does. Left nearly dead, the God of Thunder has lost again. But this time, a flash of light appears. And that's where I'll leave this story. Stay tuned for part 2, The God Bomb.